When the unthinkable happens and children commit heinous acts, the system is forced to react. Prisons designed for hardened criminals become their new reality. In prison, torture and murder are commonplace. But what exactly happens to these young people behind bars? Today we look at the tragic fate of 4 children in prison. Amarjit Sada. First up is Amarjit Sada, a boy whose story is both horrifying and perplexing. Born in 1998 in the small village of Mushahar in Bihar, India, Amarjit grew up in extreme poverty. His family struggled to make ends meet, and the arrival of a baby sister when he was 7 only added to their financial burden. His parents, both illiterate, had little time or energy to devote to their children. However, they couldn't have foreseen the monstrous path their son would take. From an early age, Amarjit displayed signs of a troubled mind. He was often described as a loner, spending time climbing trees and roaming the village alone. The first known incident, however, occurred in 2006 when his aunt left her 6-month-old daughter with Amarjit's family while she worked in the city. Amarjit's mother had gone to the market, and finding his cousin alone, he began pinching and slapping her. As she cried, he tightened his grip around her throat until she died. He then took her body to a nearby forest, bashed her head with a brick, and buried her. His family, rather than reporting the crime, chose to cover it up. This shocking decision allowed Amarjit's violent tendencies to go unchecked. Not long after, he turned his attention to his 8-month-old sister. One night, while his parents slept, he strangled her. His mother discovered the lifeless body when she woke to feed the baby. Again, his parents chose not to involve the authorities, treating the incident as a private family matter. In 2007, Amarjit's crimes took an even more disturbing turn. He killed another infant, a 6-month-old girl named Khushbu. The child's mother had left her at a primary school, believing she would be safe. Witnesses saw Amarjit with the baby, and when she was reported missing, he was brought in for questioning. He confessed to strangling her, hitting her with a brick, and burying her body. Amarjit was just 8 years old at the time, but he showed no remorse as he led the police to the burial sites of his victims. The casual manner in which he described the murders indicated deeper psychological issues. He was diagnosed with conduct disorder, a serious behavioral and emotional disorder in children that involves a persistent pattern of disruptive and violent behavior and a disregard for rules and social norms. Indian law prohibits imprisoning children, so Amarjit was placed in a juvenile detention facility in Munger. He was kept in solitary confinement due to the nature of his crimes and his potential danger to others. The facility provided him with psychological treatment and counseling, but the experts who evaluated him noted that he even exhibited traits of a sadist, someone who derives pleasure from inflicting pain on others. As he approached the age of 18, the legal system faced a significant challenge. Under Indian law, juveniles cannot be held beyond this age in detention facilities designed for children. This meant that upon reaching adulthood, Amarjit had to be released. The government decided to provide him with a new identity to protect him and to give him a chance to integrate back into society. Chad Padilla. On January 22, 2018, Chad Padilla, just 16 years old at the time, enters the cafeteria of Italy High School in Texas. There, he encounters his 15-year-old classmate, Michaela Jones. The two had a brief exchange, with Michaela trying to comfort Chad, who appeared visibly upset. She even offered him a hug and invited him to sit with her, attempting to understand and alleviate his distress. However, Chad's response was chilling. He apologized to Michaela, saying, "Sorry it had to end this way," before drawing a handgun and shooting her multiple times. The scene turned chaotic as students and staff reacted to the sudden gunfire, but Chad did not stop even at this point. He pursued Michaela outside the cafeteria, but his rampage ended when he was confronted by law enforcement and dropped his weapon. Despite the serious injuries, Michaela survived after a week of intensive medical treatment. Chad's actions were shocking and led to immediate legal consequences. He was arrested and charged with attempted capital murder and aggravated assault. Despite his young age, the severity of his crime meant he was tried as an adult. The court proceedings were swift, and Chad was found guilty, resulting in a 40-year prison sentence. He was sent to the Telford unit near Texarkana, Texas, where he began serving his time. Inmates often target younger and weaker prisoners, leading to a constant state of vigilance and fear. Reports from the prison also indicated that Chad struggled to adapt. He participated in various rehabilitation programs and educational opportunities, but the weight of his crime and the harsh conditions took a toll on his mental health. Over time, the stress and isolation became overwhelming. On March 21, 2022, Chad Padilla was found unconscious in his cell. Prison staff attempted life-saving measures, but he was pronounced dead shortly after being discovered. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice investigated his death and concluded that it was a suicide. Chad was just 20 years old at the time of his death, having spent only 4 years in the harsh prison system. Carnel. December 1st, 1997, a typical school morning at Heath High School in West Paducah, Kentucky, was about to transform into a nightmare very soon. The 14-year-old Michael Carnel had already smuggled a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol and several rifles into the school, concealed in a blanket that he passed off as a school project. As students gathered for a voluntary prayer circle in the lobby, Michael opened fire, killing 3 students and injuring 5 others. Among the dead were 14-year-old Nicole Hadley, 17-year-old Jessica James, and 15-year-old Casey Steger. The victims included friends and classmates who had never anticipated such violence from someone they knew. In the days and weeks following the shooting, investigators learned that Michael had been experiencing severe mental health issues. He reported hearing voices commanding him to commit acts of violence, voices he felt powerless to resist. After his arrest, Michael faced a series of evaluations that revealed he suffered from schizophrenia, a severe mental disorder characterized by delusions, hallucinations, and impaired thinking. His defense team argued that his mental illness played a significant role in the shooting, leading to a plea deal. In October 1998, Michael pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, and burglary, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Initially housed at the Northern Kentucky Youth Development Center, Michael was later transferred to the Kentucky State Reformatory in LaGrange when he turned 18. Throughout his incarceration, he received treatment for his mental health conditions, including medications like Zoloft and Geodon, to manage his symptoms. Despite these efforts, Michael continued to struggle with his mental health, experiencing episodes of psychosis that required hospitalization. In 2007, Michael sought to overturn his guilty plea, arguing that his mental illness had impaired his ability to make a sound legal decision. However, his request was denied by the Kentucky Supreme Court, which upheld his original sentence. Further appeals in 2012 were also unsuccessful, reinforcing the permanence of his life sentence. In 2022, Michael became eligible for parole, marking 25 years since the tragic events at Heath High School. During his parole hearing, he expressed remorse for his actions, acknowledging the pain he caused and his ongoing battles with mental illness. Despite his expressions of regret, the parole board unanimously denied his request for release, citing the severity of his crimes and the lasting impact on the victims and their families. The decision effectively meant that Michael would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole, barring any extraordinary interventions like a gubernatorial pardon. Trina Garnett. Last but not least on our list for today is Trina Garnett. Born into extreme poverty and abuse, Trina lost her mother at 9, leaving her to navigate a harsh world. Her father, a violent alcoholic, only added to her trauma. On the streets of Chester, Pennsylvania, Trina struggled with severe mental disabilities, including a low IQ and speech impediments, which were a result of her abusive upbringing and lack of medical care. One fateful night in 1976, a 14-year-old Trina, driven by anger and confusion, set a fire in a neighbor's house. The fire quickly spread, trapping and killing 2 young boys inside. Despite her obvious mental impairments and the tragic circumstances of her life, Trina was tried as an adult and sentenced to life without parole. The judge, bound by mandatory sentencing laws, had no choice but to impose this harsh punishment, even though he acknowledged the lack of facilities for proper rehabilitation for someone like Trina. Trina's life in prison was brutal from the start. Soon after her arrival, she was raped by a prison guard and became pregnant. Her son was taken away immediately after birth, adding to her psychological torment. Over the years, Trina's mental and physical health deteriorated. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which left her reliant on a wheelchair and needing constant assistance. Despite these challenges, she participated in prison programs whenever possible, even training service dogs, but her involvement was limited due to her health and the nature of her sentence. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles were unconstitutional, offering a glimmer of hope for Trina and others like her. Advocates argued that her mental condition made it impossible for her to form the intent to kill, a crucial factor overlooked during her initial trial. Yet despite the ruling, Trina's path to freedom remained complex and uncertain. She was, however, resentenced again in 2018 after her attorneys won a landmark ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. Then, Ms. Garnett was finally released in November 2019. If you enjoyed this video, you should click on the ones displayed on your screen to enjoy more content. See you next time.